Jackie's here, changing life loving you. Yeah, that's the groove, life loving you. Feel the truth, move, life loving you. It's all we do, come on through, it's just for you.
Welcome to Love, Life, and You with Dr. Jacquie. In today's episode, we're diving into a topic that affects many relationships, but often goes unspoken: the silent treatment. We'll explore the emotional damage it can cause and the underlying passive-aggressive behavior it may reflect. Whether you've experienced it or used it yourself, we'll unpack how this communication pattern impacts connection and what healthier alternatives look like. Let's dive in.
I'm Dr. Jacquie, and I want to sound off on a topic that one of our followers was mentioning. Apparently, they're dealing with the silent treatment, and they want to explore what's up with the silent treatment. Is it good? Is it manipulation? How does it affect the relationship? And joining me today for this podcast, I have Pastor Stephen Rodriguez.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. It's such a privilege to be here with you.
Well, I'm eager to hear what you have to say about the silent treatment. First of all, have you been a partaker of it?
Yes, I have to admit that was one of my approaches to conflict in my marriage. I would practice the silent treatment with my wife, and I had to learn through time that was not the best approach.
So why did you even use it in the first place? Can you tell me, what were you thinking?
Sure.
What generated that response?
Sure. In my case, I think it was just a fear of conflict. I tried to avoid conflict at all possible. So
Yes.
I would just try to brush it under the rug, and I ended up being more like a ticking time bomb. So any moment where any little thing set me off, then it would turn into a huge argument. So I had to learn that it was better to talk about it, even if there was a disagreement, even if, maybe it didn't end, with a hug, like something very happy, but at least we were able to resolve that issue, and we were able to move forward and grow. And I think that's why it's so important to avoid the silent treatment at all costs, because when you do resolve the conflict, even though it's difficult, it helps your relationship to grow. You're able to overcome the struggles.
As you're talking, the first thought that came to my mind, isn't it funny how what you fear half the time never really happens? But sometimes your fear can create monsters that will begin to inhabit your reality. Yes. So for example, if you would have just talked about it, things could have gotten better.
Yes.
But because you avoided talking about it, I'm assuming that your wife didn't feel very happy about that.
Definitely. She did not feel happy about it. It just put a strain in our communication, trust, in so many areas. So I had to learn through time and just seeking help that the best alternative was to talk about it, to have effective communication so that we can have trust, so that we can be transparent and overcome those different areas where we were having conflicts.
So let's talk about effective communication. So since you have dealt with it yourself, what did you find to be effective? So you mentioned that you were afraid at first of confrontation. You just didn't want to rock the boat.
Right.
So what did you do step by step to now make that transition?
Well, first I realized that there was going to be conflict regardless. Even if I tried to brush it off, it was going to be worse. So it was better to face it that day or very soon so that we can overcome that issue. And so I started to be a little more transparent, open up a little bit more. I was a very reserved person to myself, and that was not the best approach to those type of situations. So I started taking baby steps, speaking a little bit more, letting my wife know how I felt, what bothered me, how I felt about different situations. And then she began to understand me a little bit better. And we began to just trust each other a little bit more and learn how to speak to each other in a respectful manner, and still be able to overcome those areas where we were having differences of opinions, where we were having conflict, and it turned out a lot better.
Good. The next thought that I had was this. If you kind of keep things bottled up, I heard you say that you could become like a ticking time bomb. But I also would imagine if you're just trying to keep everything under wraps, but you're having these feelings, and because you're not discussing them, they're not able to be resolved, I'm wondering, isn't your love being eroded over time as well, simply because you've been sitting on so much stuff?
Oh yes, that it leads to bitterness, it leads to resentment, it leads to so many areas where you just have unforgiveness towards your spouse. So it's better to discuss it, talk about it, see how you can get to an agreement, compromise, and be able to forgive each other. Because if you hold it in, it's just going to lead to bitterness, and you're going to have that hardened heart, and you're not going to have that communication. Like you said, that love is going to erode over time. So it's why it is so dangerous.
But it's so amazing to me because really it's being eroded on both ends. Because if I'm your wife and you're not really talking to me and I feel like I can't connect and communicate, it's really doing something to me.
Yes.
But then nobody maybe thinks about what is it doing to you too, because you're literally swallowing, sitting on stuff that you really need to discuss. So I want to talk about something that I wrote about in one of my workbooks. It's called Rejection and Avoidance. And it's basically talking about this same silent killer. So I remember when I was first married as well. My husband would get mad, and my son took after him. When he used to get mad, he'd be mad for like days. Like you'd have to wait because he wouldn't want to talk until he got over whatever it was. But like in that time, there's no conversation. So he's in the house with you, but then he would kind of like avoid not only the conversation, but there would be some space even physically between the two of us. It went on for a while. But what I noticed about it is it's a way of deflecting. So you're not really dealing with what the real issue is. I'm passing it over. But silently, I'm almost saying that you are the problem. Yes. Because I'm punishing you by now not speaking to you and putting that distance. Right. So I look at it as a tactic of deflection, but it's also one of punishment. Yes, and I feel like it's a power struggle. It's, it's like that person using some form of manipulation because it's putting a power shift on that particular issue that has arisen. And I remember with my husband, I started feeling some sort of way about it. And then eventually I just put my foot down and said, listen, if we have an issue, we're going to have to talk about it and resolve it. I don't mind if you're upset. Just tell me I'm able to be corrected or whatever. But what's not going to be an option is that we just don't talk, period. Right. And it was funny. My husband changed immediately. It didn't take him like any kind of time. I think it just took me saying like, this isn't working for us. Right. We just can't do this, going forward. But it was interesting because he also shared the same thing that you did. It was his issue of, I think, confrontation, but I think inwardly it was also his way of dealing with his anger. Yes. So like if you did something that made him mad, now he's going to punish you by now not talking about it. Right. Was he concerned about it also being an issue of, maybe things escalating or an issue of confrontation? I'm sure it was, but there was also that other element. So I have to say that I think that it can be very much a killer. Here are the outcomes. The person that is in the relationship with the one that's using the silent treatment is going to feel as if there's something wrong with them and the way that they feel. Right. So two things could happen. Either they're going to mute themselves and then also kind of begin to swallow their feelings and not discuss, and also feel somewhat detached in the relationship. Or they're going to do kind of like what I did, like just press on to finding the resolve and getting that person that's in the relationship with them the ability to talk and trying to create a safe space where that conversation or future conversations can happen. Right. But I find that a lot of times people become muted as a result of being in these silent relationships, not able to deal with conflict. Right. And I had this other question for you because I'm thinking about my husband and I know where he adopted that from. In his family, if something went wrong, his mother just believed you don't deal with it. You don't talk about it, you just leave it alone and like it's gonna just, go away. Right. Had you ever figured out where your root came from?
I think it came, I'm the youngest of three, so I think, I did experience some bullying.
You're the baby boy.
Yes. Yes, and I had not only my older siblings, but my older cousins as well. So I was the youngest in the household, and we lived in Chicago in a building where, we all lived together pretty much. So I was bullied, and I think just to resolve, or not to resolve, but just to face those situations, I just held everything in. And I practiced that even while I was dating my wife. Where, on the surface, it looked like everything was fine because we were getting along. We would go out to a movie, go out to have dinner. But I was really just avoiding things and just holding them in. And then as we got closer to our wedding, then I started to open up it a little more. And she's like, hey, where's this person?
Yeah, where'd this come from?
Yes. And
Who are you?
Yeah, she had already known me for like 6 years. But that person hadn't come out before until just before we got married. And then our first year of marriage was very difficult. Because
now she's dealing with the new Steven.
Yes. She was getting to know the new me that I had held in for so long. And what that did also is that I would bring up things from months ago. Oh, but you did this. Because I would hold it in and not communicate effectively, I would hold things in and then bring up things from 3, 4, 5 months ago. And she'd be like, hey, where's this coming from? Why didn't we talk about it then? And so I had to learn that it was better to address the issue then, maybe give 30 minutes, an hour to, think about it, calm down, and then speak about it, but not let weeks or even months pass by and then speak about it, because then it was going to come from a place of anger, not from a place of understanding.
I bet you do a lot of thinking in your head.
Yes.
Are you one of those in my head kind of people?
Yes.
Yeah. And you know, I hate to say it, but my recommendation is I don't believe that anybody comes to the planet as passive aggressive or somebody that's, you know, I don't know what the word would be, but to be in the moment. I think sometimes we live our lives so much in here when really we need to be living it out there, right?
Yes.
And that's something that I've noticed too, people that live in their head. Because my God, if I'm going to turn that thing over in my mind, you know, like for 15 minutes, an hour, oh my God. I've seen 150 different, you know, compilations of how things could go. Instead of just choosing the best one that comes to my mind, you know, think about 2 or 3, choosing the best one that fits good for me and acting on it. So I've lived a lifetime in my mind only. And, you know, I think that it kind of cultivates that issue of fear, or you're over concerned about something bad happening.
Right.
But I just feel like when 2 people are together, they love each other, they want to work it out.
Right.
And I feel like we have to accept each other as we are. And let me just go to one of the other questions. How dangerous is the silent treatment to your relationship? You kind of touched on that.
Yes.
Is it dangerous? Is it manipulative? I think it is.
I agree.
And what are other alternatives? So
I do agree that it is dangerous. It is manipulative, because you're cutting off that communication. And when there's no communication, a relationship cannot work. So I think it also affects trust. Trust is a major foundation.
talk about that. How does it affect trust?
Because, you know, the couples cannot trust each other. They you know, they're holding things in. They're not able to express how they really feel. And I just think you can't really know a person unless they communicate, unless they're transparent. And that way you can trust that person more. You can trust them with your emotions. My wife at times would open up to me, and I did not show any empathy, because I would just hold things in that she would say something and I would just move on to the next topic. And I didn't address the day that she had, the difficult situation she had at work, or a problem in her family, and I would just brush it off and move on and say, oh, okay, so how's this? And then that also really affected her, because she realized she couldn't open up to me, because whenever she needed support, I was not that support. So I needed to really work in that area in my life in order to show her that I care, that I can empathize with her, that she can trust me with her feelings, with her emotions, with things that she wouldn't express to anyone else. I needed to be that crying shoulder. I needed to be that support for her. And I finally broke out of that silent treatment. And I think it was manipulation also from my end, because I would try to hurt her by holding it in. And as a matter of fact, I was really hurting myself, because I was building in that bitterness, like I said earlier, that
From that unresolved resentment.
Yes.
For all those years. Think about it. You said you knew her for 6 years.
Yes.
I'm thinking to myself, were you really going to marry her? Or were you having second thoughts? Because for 6 years, you weren't able to really be yourself.
Right. I mean, I did want to marry her. I don't think it was so much that I didn't want to be with her, but I think it was just me trying to portray someone that I really wasn't. Like I didn't trust her to see who I really was. And I was afraid to have a disagreement and then for things not to work out. Because we went through a process also in our dating where we did separate for about 2 years. And it was very difficult for me. And I would say that was one of the most difficult processes.
You're like, oh my God, that was difficult for me.
Yes,
You couldn't let go of that good thing.
It was difficult. I went through loneliness. It took me about a year to really recover from that, where I really was able to let her go. And then she came back into the picture. And so I didn't want something like that to happen again. So maybe that was another reason why I tried to avoid conflict, but I realized that was not the solution. The solution was I needed to face that conflict and overcome it together with her and trust her with my feelings.
But how much progress did you make right away? Like, describe to our viewers, what is the process like of making this transition from being in my head, from being silent, to being someone that's able to openly discuss in a productive way what's really on your mind?
It was a process. It was not one day to the next. I would say it took, I think it would say about maybe 4 years into our marriage, I was really finally able to open up, address conflict. I mean, it was a process. So I started little by little, but then I would say about 4 years into our marriage is when I really was more transparent, was really able to open up. And now we're going into our 7th year of marriage, and no marriage is perfect, but we're doing a lot better in communication, respecting each other. When there's a disagreement, we talk about it that same day, and we try to compromise and understand each other, and sometimes even agree to disagree. That we have different opinions, but we were created differently, but I think we complement each other because she has strengths in areas where I'm weak and vice versa. So we help each other out.
Good. Because in my mind, I'm just listening to your detail, and I know that so are our listeners, and they're probably thinking, yeah, so 4 years, I don't know if we're going to make 4 years. But I want to kind of end this podcast with just giving you a couple of touch points. The first one being, I think the first step is to recognize that I am using that silent killer. Are you somebody that kind of lives a lot in your head? So we can refrain from doing the things that we first of all recognize that we do that aren't fruitful. So if you live a lot in your head, you need to start coming out of your head and vocalizing what you're thinking. That's the first thing. Number two, I think that the second step would be to set rules. That would be like having a meeting of the mind, sitting down with your loved one and saying, hey, listen, I noticed that I do so-and-so, and I want to get better with it. This is something that I practice personally. Why? Because first of all, it creates responsibility, accountability. If I tell my mate, hey, listen, I noticed I've been doing this, and this isn't good for our relationship. I want to change it. Now, my mate is going to check me on what I'm saying. So when I falter, they're going to bring it to my, bring it to mind. Hey, listen, you said you weren't going to do so-and-so, you're doing it right now. And it kind of helps to keep me on that straight and narrow. But then it also lets them know to anticipate change and to work with me for my change, to work with me. So I like everything about that. The third thing that I would do is I would set now some measures in place that if I'm, say, for example, it could be whenever I'm upset, I'm going to, first of all, come to you and let you know that we need to talk and to find a good time that's good for you and that's good for me. Second thing, I will not play it over and over in my mind while I'm waiting for us to have that conversation. I'll show up to the conversation being a blank slate to hear so that I can understand you and to speak so that I can be understood. And then with that we also frame out the conversation, that we will continue to discuss it until we come to a resolution. One of the problems I feel that men have with women need security. So when we have a disagreement or when we have a situation where we're needing your support, we're looking for an expected end. And when we don't see that expected end, because we need to know for security what we can anticipate from this day going forward. So a lot of times men will have a conversation with a woman, and just because they've had the conversation, they'll feel like, okay, we're good now. No, with a woman, you're not good unless the woman understands. This happened, I didn't like it. I don't want that to happen anymore. So from now on, you need to tell me, what are you going to do so that that does not happen again? So now she understands what the expected end is. Yes. So you need to finally just come up with what you're going to do towards that resolve. You're going to have your conversation, and that you will continue to talk until you find resolve. For me, what I tell couples is this. If you've been fighting for resolve, you've been talking and talking, and you've not yet ironed out all the wrinkles, now it's time to look for a third person. You need either a therapist or like me, I'm a coach. A coach is someone that helps you to do practical steps that will lead to a resolve. So it's not so much dealing with your past and how you felt before, but what do we need to do now to move forward? And, I don't tell people to do what I don't do. My husband and I see a coach because I believe every year there's things that are going to transpire that need to be resolved. So any areas where you failed to find resolve, the sooner you fix it, the better off you'll be. Yes. Listen, I hope that you've really gotten some good tidbits from this conversation. Pastor, I want to thank you so much, Pastor Stephen, for being here. You were amazing. You were transparent. I hope that our listeners receive some information they can aptly apply and receive relief. Hey, Dr. Jacquie here. I'm your how-to lady. How to do life, how to do love, and how to do you, boo. So click, like, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more to come.